What is good, Lottery Stocks fam? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the channel. If you're new, I don't know exactly where I want to start this, but I do want to talk about a couple of things. One, we know that retail investors have been the main driver of the markets going up, and we really got to talk about some charts, what the SPY is rejecting off of, and the news that we have coming out tomorrow. But we also saw Palantir and HIMS report very good earnings, yet they still fell off a cliff, down 13%. So institutions are not loading up just yet, and retail investors have been the main driver. So we have to really take a close look at what's going to happen tomorrow. I want to talk about it. I want to prep you for it. Watch until the end of the video, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and make sure to have post notifications on. Okay, I got cooked on Palantir earnings. I played this to the upside, and now it has formed out a massive double top. It did come out to my lower target around 107, which is the target I had if Palantir did sell off, and that's exactly what happened, unfortunately. Now, this is a double top on the charts that you're seeing, a massive one where there's this hard rejection wall at 125. Investors don't want it up there, but there are people calling for $70 now. I don't think that is necessarily going to happen. HIMS reported great earnings, and they actually popped off of market open instead of last night. Now, I want to talk about the SPY very quickly. We are at 561.81, and this is a crucial point for the SPY because tomorrow we have the FOMC. What does that mean? That means we are going to get a rate decision. We are going to hear whether Jerome Powell comes out and he says the Fed is very dovish. He's going to act like the Fed is very dovish or very hawkish, which is essentially going to move the markets. Now, we have what I think is the slightly more likely scenario, which is a delayed rally, meaning the SPY is likely going to sell off tomorrow hard, probably down to 551.40. That is my ultimate downside price target, 551.40. Write that down on your charts. Maybe we hold 533. Maybe we hold 555. But ultimately, what we see right now on the daily time frame is the 200 EMA the SPY is rejecting off of. We actually broke above it, and now we came back down beneath it and are rejecting it off the day. This is the easiest interpretation of a failed breakout. This is a rejection off of a key level that we had to hold above. We saw a failed breakout right here, and what do you know? What did the SPY end up doing? Not calling for this necessarily, but the SPY immediately got a 7% sell off, and it actually sold off even more after that. Okay, this is ugly. This failed breakout above the 200 EMA, coming back beneath it. And essentially, this is a rejection candle where we are likely to see a huge red candle tomorrow. As far as this huge red candle goes, what is going to happen after that? We also saw the SPY break below the mid-range of this channel right here, meaning the SPY could come down to 551 or it could break even lower down to 542. 542 is a harsh downside target. Following that, I think retail is going to freak out and call out for more downside and more further crash on the markets, and we are going to rally. This, in my opinion, is the more likely scenario. The flip side scenario, and I'll explain why that's the more likely scenario. The flip side scenario is that we get a massive we actually don't get that massive crackdown. We actually open tomorrow above the 200 EMA. If we open above the 200 EMA or we recapture it at all and close above it, that is likely just going to kick us off into a bull market. Ultimately, temporary downside before smashing higher or just smashing higher. This is ultimately what I assume. Based on some signals, I'm not sure we are going to see a further crash lower than the other lows, but there are some things we have to pay attention to. One of them is being Bitcoin. First of all, before I talk about that, gold is also coming back up to 3,400, which is another warning signal as well. But ultimately, Bitcoin, we are in this point where Bitcoin really has to decide what it's going to do on the weekly candle. And I think if the same thing plays out with the SPY tomorrow, Bitcoin's going to flush under 90K, and then it's going to get a very fast relief bounce up to 106. The reason I'm calling for a fake out is so that institutions can actually get in once retail lets go. Here's what I'm seeing, right? Why that's a possibility. Why are we not going to see a further crash? A lot of it has to do with tomorrow, what the Fed is going to say. For one, if the Fed says we don't mind dumping liquidity into the markets in June, we don't mind cutting rates in June. What we also see, and this had to do with HIMS and hers, right? This had to do with HIMS and Palantir, is that institutions are sitting on the sideline and they're going, okay, we're seeing good earnings, right? This is a big driving factor. Are the earnings still holding up to the valuations things are at? And now institutions are saying, wow, retail bought in. They're getting kind of lucky here because we're seeing some nasty earnings. And we might be ready to get back in depending on what the Fed says. If the Fed is dovish and we're seeing good earnings, you're going to see institutions get ready to lock back in. And what's going to happen is you're going to see a sharp move down. Maybe short sellers load back up, and then they get squozed out of their positions. Now, the S&P 500 ETF VU posted 20.9 billion in net inflows last month, which is the most in its 15-year history. This is insane. But again, like I said before, this is purchases that were driven by retail investors who are purchasing stocks at record paces. If they can't get retail to capitulate here when we break down to 551, when we break down to 542, then unfortunately, what I can tell you right now is if they don't get retail to capitulate, we're going to break under 542. We're going to break under 500. We're going to break under 460. This is all in my opinion. So that is something that we're watching for tomorrow. I want to bring up Tesla. It's back in my buy range to play it to the upside. We also have fading volume on this sell-off right here, which is actually pretty perfect. I think Tesla is at a great entry, but again, we could flush tomorrow to 265 to 260 depending on the news, and you might be able to get a little bit of a better entry, but I do think we are going to come right back up above 286 to recapture the 200 EMA and then above 300 pretty soon. I also want to talk about Apple. There are some mixed signals on the options chain, but I ultimately had a target. I called this out on their earnings. Target down here at about 196. We came down to it, and then I also had a pop on the chart where Apple would come higher. I ultimately assume Apple, as well as a couple other Magnificent Seven plays, are going to go higher. I've talked about Nvidia. I think Apple's chart looks pretty bullish. I think Nvidia's chart looks pretty bullish. I think Amazon's chart looks pretty bullish. But ultimately, there's still mixed signals, right? The mixed signals on the chain right now is that Apple could see another drop, and if we break below this, it might be a hard one for Apple, so we're gonna have to pay attention to that as well. I want to talk about AMD very briefly before I talk about GameStop and AMC to close out the video. First of all, AMD reports earnings tonight. It's trading at $99.14. I'm expecting a move to between 107 and 116, maybe even 121, depending on how hard these earnings go up, which is about a 7% gain, a 17% gain, or a 20% gain on AMD. This is ultimately what I expect. Again, these earnings have been whipsaw, and based on the earnings that we're seeing, everything is kind of just going red on earnings, right? No matter how good the earnings actually are. I personally believe that AMD is very oversold, and I am willing to run this one. Now, GameStop just sold all their Canadian retail locations. We also had Northern Trust Corp purchase more GameStop, 99.3 million position in GameStop Northern Trust has as of right now. Then we also saw Universal Investment announcing a 1.36 million GameStop position at an estimated cost basis of $27 a share in their latest 13F filing. Then we also saw 8 million in dark pool buy orders hit the dark pool exchange, but nothing is hitting the lit exchange just yet, and that is why you're seeing us fall off a cliff. Treehouse Brewing also posted this, so it's a little bit iffy to say that it's tin. They posted the Canada Gold right when GameStop sold their Canadian stores. Then now they're posting green. But that is not what we're seeing on the charts. GameStop is actually down about 3%, 25.83. One thing I want you to note right now before I talk about the charts is that implied volatility is nearing extremely low levels. What does this mean, Lottery Sucks? Well, this means basically that if you did want to buy call contracts on GameStop, the premium you're paying is extremely low, which is a good thing if you assumed that we are going to get a large move higher. Okay, so nothing I say is financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, but take that with what you will. Now, I said yesterday if GameStop broke below this second level down here at 26, you're likely coming down to around 24.75. I do still believe that that is going to happen, but let's talk about what could possibly happen in the charts. I had a couple things drawn out. First things first, why did we sell off so quick the past 2 days, these two candles? That is because there's not a lot of support here. We recently had a gap between 27.40 and 25.90. And once we broke into this gap, into this wick right here, there wasn't a ton of support. You can see every time GameStop is in this range, you see very, very fast moves, very, very fast moves every time. So this just happens to be that the move is down. Once we get to critical support, right around the 25 range, sub 25, slightly sub 25, is when we should see GameStop attempt to hold up. But again, we might see that sell off with everything yesterday before a rally higher. Ultimately, best case scenario, that is what we see. We see a bounce off of 24.75 tomorrow after people panic, or maybe we go lower. But I do want to point out a couple of things really quick. When GameStop had this, let me see. When GameStop had this little retracement before the squeeze, this was about a 22% retracement. We're not even feeling the blood just yet. A 22% retracement takes us down to about 22 bucks. Okay, so we're not really feeling the blood just yet. GameStop is only down about 9% off its recent highs. So that's something that we have to note. As far as the cycle goes, watching where GameStop, let me go to, let's jump to the 1 hour real quick. Watching where GameStop is trading at right now based on the cycle, this is something that we could be seeing, right? We're right in this part where GameStop decides that it wants to sell off right here. Then we build the base, then we climb higher before selling off even further. Now, I don't like this case scenario, and the reason being is because that only calls for a slightly higher high before dropping down, before squeezing way later in the year. That squeeze would put us at, would put us, let's grab the 4 hours so we can actually see this, in September, October, which is not something that we want to see ultimately. And I think this is a way less likely case scenario, so I just want to put that out there. And another thing is it doesn't have to play out, and I can put out a scenario right here for you. It's because this same exact cycle, when it played out this time, it actually ended up squeezing in May, and that's exactly why it doesn't have to play out right here. We are going to likely squeeze May, June, and that is what I will still stand by. But this is just a brief update on the charts. What can spark it off? Can we get a bounce tonight? Can we stop selling off right now? We are seeing the call premium being loaded up. We are seeing shares being loaded up. People are still bullish on GameStop. And I will say AMC can kick things off. We can see a massive sell-off Wednesday with FOMC, with the markets, with GameStop, with AMC. And then AMC reports after hours. Things can start turning around in the market, shaking retail out like paper hands. And then we see AMC pop, GameStop follow it, and then things can start going up after the 7th. Okay, this is just one simple possibility. I want to talk about the charts. That is basically it, because AMC reports tomorrow. I'm hoping for something decent. I'm hoping for a move above 325 or 393, which is going to be massive, 23 to 50% move. If that doesn't happen, we're going to have to wait until the zone that I have drawn out on AMC, which is mid to late June at the earliest, before we see some sort of pops. That is ultimately what I'm watching out for. That is what I got for you guys for today's video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you're not in my Discord server, it's the top link in the description. If you want 50% off a funded futures account, use code LOTTO at checkout. If you want up to 60 free stocks, use my link, download Moomoo, open an account and make a deposit. It is completely free, no strings attached. If you want the best fundamental analysis tool to see if stocks are overvalued, use that fourth link in the comments down below. Don't forget to get in the Discord, guys. Best vibes, best people. Come talk with me. Come see my trades, all that other stuff. That is it. I love you all. God bless. Lottery Stocks out.